I'm ready.
Good morning, everyone. At this time, I'll call the Audit and Control Committee meeting to order for June 20th, 2025. First order of business is an approval of the minutes from the last meeting. If everyone had an opportunity to review those and there's no corrections, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I looked them over and found no errors. They looked really nice. So if I could, I'd like to make the motion to approve the minutes.
And a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, it is carried. Second order of business today is a privilege of the floor. Is anyone here to address the committee today? If so, please come down front. Not seeing any, we'll move into our proposed resolutions. On the agenda today, the first proposed resolution is authorized lease agreement at the Chautauqua County Jamestown Airport for parking lot space with Federal Express Corporation, a Delaware corporation.
Good morning, everybody. Tim Carr, Director of Public Facilities, and I want to introduce anybody that hasn't met John yet. John McNamara is our new director at the airport.
Good morning, all.
Good morning and welcome to the committee this morning, and welcome to service with Chautauqua County. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Appreciate the welcome and looking forward to it. And it's been a good first 2 weeks.
Good.
So first up, have authorization to lease approximately 44 parking spots to FedEx for employee parking, and at a rate of $500 per month. And that's out front of the terminal.
Is this in a continuation?
Nope.
It's new.
This
Where have
is
they been
new.
parking before? Or are we just all
Well,
of a
what they're
sudden gonna?
doing is FedEx is they're expanding their Jamestown operation, and they're going to be bringing in another 100 to 120 new employees
Okay.
for delivery service out of that facility, so they're going to need more parking space. In what little bit of time it has been, they have been accessing our space a little bit currently, but yeah, they're looking at possibly, and John can give you more, but they're possibly even looking at maybe adding another building up there next to where they're currently at.
Good. Does this impede with the use of the parking lot for the drive, the test driving?
No,
No, it's
all at one
be
end.
the west end of the parking lot.
We don't need any accidents.
But, yeah.
Makes it a little more.
We could set them up like solemn, so you just run out of
Right.
space every.
Make a loop through.
Spread.
Yeah, so as Tim indicated, they're expanding, busy over at FedEx there, and they're looking to working with their project manager on expanding the parking lot area down the road there around their facility, and then possibly adding another building to the facility. But for this will kind of get them through for the next 6 months, and we'll generate the revenue from the parking. So
Are all these spots still on their side? I'll call it their side of the driveway.
No, it's across.
They're
in the-
coming
in the
back,
big
they're coming
parking
over?
lot.
Okay.
yeah,
In the big parking lot.
Is it more air traffic too that you're seeing with this expansion probably?
well, I mean, it's their business is ground right
Yeah.
now, so there may be some associated with it, currently, but nothing significant
Okay.
associated with that.
Any other questions, comments?
Well, I have a question, but and this is mostly because I didn't pay attention in bookkeeping and so in high school, but I'm looking at the resolution and it says, it's $500 for 6 months, it's $3,000. We decrease the fund balance, 3,000, and then we increase the revenue account, 3,000? Is that like the
Yeah,
standard?
so before they were probably, this is a new contract, right? So they were using fund balance, and otherwise now they don't have to because they have a new revenue.
Okay.
So there's a new revenue that they can utilize
Okay.
and put toward their departmental income, I suppose, instead of using the unassigned fund balance.
Okay, I just, yeah, thank you, I
Yeah,
just
it's-
wondered why that was
The
up there.
verbiage is tricky because when it comes to fund balance, it's decrease the use of, where all of the other references are either decrease the appropriation, decrease the revenue. So instead of decreasing the use of and decreasing the actual account, it makes it a little bit confusing. But it does actually increase, the fund balance by decreasing the use of it. So it's a little bit confusing. It's a word
Mhm.
thing.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other questions? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next proposed resolution is number 2. It's authorized ground lease with the Erie JHW LLC at Chautauqua County Airport, Jamestown.
So, this is just a ground lease of the, ground lease for the former Blackstone hangar. JHW is purchasing the far, the eastern section of that hangar. There's 3 different bays, and they're purchasing the eastern portion of that, so they need the ground lease prior to purchasing that portion of the hangar. And as you can see, to $2,000 for the first year, increasing 2% annually.
Is this pretty common lease charge?
Yeah, it's consistent with the other tenant. Yep. And then the county has the middle share of the building.
About one of the only ones I've seen the 2% that we've been able to get too, working in our favor, so. Questions, comments?
Are these leases, does the FAA, is that who, do they, I mean, are we limited to certain dollar amounts and stuff by the, or is this just
Not,
a formula or an amount that we've come up with?
yeah, my understanding is we're not limited on this specific hangar and lease, and this is what, we're looked at past leases and current,
Right.
like the current tenant in the building,
Right.
trying to be consistent with that.
And I'm sure we're aware of other airports and what they're, sometimes these numbers just seem really low to me,
Right.
especially when I see the cost of the operation of the airports.
Yeah,
Not that you want to make it all up on one entity, but
Right.
yeah, so,
they seem modest to me.
you know, I'm in the process of reviewing that. I was actually looking at, we had an appraisal done, I believe it was in 22, of some of the facilities, the restaurant and the terminal, hangar C, and in comparison with comparables, you know, other facilities. So, I think you have a good question, and something that I'm working on getting up to speed. This, you know, this has been in works for the last 2 or 3 months. But and I think it's good because it's consistent with current, but going forward, you know, down the road, definitely something to consider.
I mean, even to jump back to that FedEx one, just making a comment that if you're adding 100 employees and it's only gonna cost you $500 to park them, that seems like a pretty good deal
Yeah.
to me. So,
Is this math correct? It seems like it's really increasing more than 2% to me. From 2025 to 3030, I mean, it's more than doubling, so that's. Even if, look at the dollar amount, right? So it's 20,000, now it goes to almost 50,000, so that's over doubling. So that's,
I think we may be looking at different numbers on the
Dan, I
totals,
think
or
you're
maybe
at
I'm
number
not.
3.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, okay. Sorry. Those percentages are much different. I like those better.
Can we apply that to the airport?
Sure,
Jeez.
if you vote in favor.
That's
of it.
probably what we're paying on the next one.
They're gonna
Okay.
wanna build a hangar up there.
Okay.
If I could, Mr. Scudder, just add, on the FedEx parking lot. I understand your point on that, and I see it as kind of mutually advantageous for FedEx as well as the airport, being that we have a big parking lot that's,
Oh, no, I
You
get
know.
it. I just sometimes, it's just like, I know what the big
Yeah.
nut is, and it's like
yep,
$500 doesn't even,
yeah,
Correct.
yep.
just saying. So, but knowing you're checking into it, I appreciate that. That's good. Yep.
Any other questions, comments? Not hearing any. All those in favor, please say aye.
I,
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next proposed resolution is authorize the renewal lease agreement with the town of Chautauqua. Yeah, for some reason I was looking at, but I was looking at the schedule.
holy moly.
Good morning, Sam Zafoto, Deputy Director of Finance.
Noel Gutman, Director of Emergency Services.
All right, yep, so this is basically a resolution for a lease amendment for the town of Chautauqua for EMS. It's an increase of space. It is an increase also in expense to the county. Going for the rest of this fiscal year comes to about $2,700, which is an unbudgeted increase. This year, however, the department does kind of hope to make that up through savings. There's a lot of the year left, so it's a little premature to be moving money around for that dollar amount. So but in the grand total, it's about $5,000 a year more year to year, but the current lease called for approximately 5,900 square feet, and this resolution now listed about approximately 6,978 square feet. So it is a space increase, as we mentioned at the public safety meeting. It's a space that they kind of already inhabited, but now we are being charged for.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, to me, it seems like a big jump, and I started looking at the math, and it seems like the rent is going up $290 a year.
Yeah, the rent going up, yeah, the
And-
total is going up from, the current contractor amount is 15,600, so for the July to basically June of next year, it's 20,000, so it is about a 5,000. It also is about 1,000 square foot difference in space.
Okay.
And it's space that essentially they were already occupying, but not essentially paying for.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was also 2 HVAC units over our building that were replaced. I think those were a cost of $20,000 apiece.
So well, it's an increase of about 16 or 17% a year. Like, on one hand, we're charging someone an extra 2%, but we're paying 16 or 17% more.
If I could step in on this really quickly, the amount of the increase year over year is actually the same dollar amount. If you look at the actual numbers, and the reason for that is exactly what Noel had mentioned, being the 2 HVAC units that are replaced. Rather than charging the department for the cost of replacing those units all up front, they spread it over the term of the renewed lease. So that's the reason for that extreme dollar amount difference you're seeing from year to year.
Would you expect then in 2036 that the cost go down?
I wouldn't. I've never seen anything.
Yeah,
No,
that's-
my point is though, is if that's the excuse for the rate of increase that we're experiencing, then we wouldn't be paying for that in 2036.
Unless the HVAC.
Unless we have incur
Something else
another
replaced
expense,
or
but,
something like that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that would all depend on what they negotiate as far as charging per square foot at that point
okay.
upon renewal, so.
I wanna know who told them about the 1,000 feet that we were using that.
And that space was, utilized for when we did the CCEMS, so we've been occupying that space for quite a while with it really just being, they just gifted us that space since the creation, since 2017.
So they were aware of it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was part of the court jury room in the town of Chautauqua Court that wasn't being used, that we were able to occupy half of that space, so.
And now it's factored completely in the lease and contract.
And the way I look at this is, there's a working relationship between the town and the county, like we've said, and when that building was acquired, there was an understanding that we were gonna try to keep things
Yeah, I believe,
the best for both.
I believe Josh Rothwell mentioned it's the intermunicipal
Yeah.
agreement. So
Yeah.
that's in play and it does seem reasonable.
So I guess I'm just gonna let that blanket what's happened here. I mean, not that that makes it sound like this is bad. I just
Yeah.
assume that all the players are playing fairly, and this is the result, so.
No, in which I do understand that agreement, it just is, if this is exactly the best way to show the expense of those HVAC units by just increasing the rent portion? Or would it be wise to separate out the rent cost and the replacement of those unit costs, just so it is separate? So that way in 2036 or whenever that, it just makes it more, I just feel that it would make it more correct, because that's what, it's not, it's just as a difference. So when you're looking at the redoing that contract, one doesn't have to rethink back and say, why was it like that? Oh, it was those units, that's all. And moving forward, it would just, it just looks like we're really paying an inflated rent, which we aren't, because if it's you know what I mean? It
Yeah,
just would
it's
be better if.
multiple things
It's
built
multiple
into the rent,
things, and it just, rent is what rent is. Expenses of building maintenance is an expense of building maintenance. It shouldn't be built into a rent expense in my eyes. Am I alone on that, or does it make
Yeah,
sense?
no, I agree.
It makes
When you look at
sense,
the
but-
rent numbers, it's like, wow. But, and then I think you've answered that question, but it's not, in 10 years, I don't know who will be here to,
Well, Pierre will be here, so.
Pierre, do you have any, would you have any insight on this as well?
Let me make a note on my page.
I'd like to just build off of what Legislator Scudder was saying, is that, we have an intermunicipal agreement for the use of that building, and that has been very beneficial to the county, and it has been beneficial to the town. Put this in perspective, this proposed lease would have us paying in 2035, $7 a square foot approximately. Market rate for a facility like that today is roughly $15 a square foot. So even with this increase, it's still gonna be very beneficial to the county, okay? So that's one perspective. Second perspective is, whatever lease arrangements we have with property owners who are willing to lease their facilities to us, they incorporate their maintenance cost into the lease agreement. They don't separate out that, oh, here's how much it's gonna cost you if we don't do maintenance, and here's how much it's gonna cost you if we do maintenance. So I understand your desire to understand what the cost is of the maintenance that was done, but don't you think 10 years from now that there's additional maintenance that's gonna need to be done? And at that time, we'll negotiate a lease based upon their ongoing costs for the building.
I will add that they've been a very, very good landlord for that term, as far as maintenance and issues with the building. We don't have any, I don't have to go chase people down. It's a phone call, and it's usually taken care of very quickly. So we do have a very good relationship with the town in that.
No, and I think if you can address too, some of the work that your staff has done up there to help them too.
Yeah, over the years, fire service personnel associated at our office have taken a lot of that work as well so that, essentially free labor to get a lot of that work done. So like I said, we do have a good relationship with the town, and they are very receptive, so.
Yeah, okay. No, and agreed, we have had a good experience with working with the town, and I do agree that the rate, like Legislator Shagnon pointed out, is that it is a very favorable rate, so.
yeah, I would just add, I think, well, you answered our questions, I think, but I think it's our job to to ask those questions when
Yes.
we see it,
Absolutely. Yeah,
you know, so. Good, thank you.
okay.
Good point, Tom.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next proposed resolution is authorize acceptance of the 2025 Crimes Against Revenue Program funds.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Emily Woodard. I'm an Assistant District Attorney. I am here on behalf of the Chautauqua County District Attorney's Office. Before you is a resolution to accept funds that were received to our office from the CARP program. The program was renewed by DCJS for another year. Our office received $65,000 again, which we anticipated. This revenue was included in our 2025 budget. The money funds a part-time senior investigator and the partial salary of an assistant district attorney, who is actually me. And the money is utilized for myself and the investigator and our other cooperative partners to work together to investigate and prosecute crimes that fall under this umbrella. Those crimes typically include tax fraud, welfare fraud, Medicaid fraud, unemployment fraud, workers' comp fraud, things like that.
Okay. Questions, comments? PJ?
If I could, thank you, Mr. Chairman, just one thing to point out, you know, what Mrs. Woodard is talking about is very critical. Right now, we have 2 cases, one for $24,000 and one for $36,000. Just 2 cases from our public integrity unit that we talked about, that with the help of Mrs. Woodard would be prosecuted, but these are the types of things that would be increased growing cost of Medicaid, other public assistance. We understand that public assistance is needed in the county, but we also need to make sure it goes to the right people. And this group is really, really important. I think this grant is incredibly significant. And again, you know, I thank you, Casey, for all you do, because it really is important. Our public integrity unit does not have the ability to complete its mission if you're doing this. So thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I agree. I think, unfortunately, you do get some abuse of certain programs, and you have to have a watch force or the ability to correct it when those situations arise. So this is a good opportunity to be able to cover some of those expenses in doing that. Be challenging for the county to promote this in its entirety, so the grant funds are extremely helpful. Questions or comments, others? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next proposed resolution is number 6, setting transportation stipend, Chautauqua County Coroner. No, sorry, I missed one. Number 5 is authorize acceptance of the statewide targeted reductions to intimate partner violence grant funds for 2025, 2026.
Thank you again. So this is a new grant that was established by DCJS. It targets specifically intimate partner violence. The initial audience was the city of Jamestown. As we really, dug into the application process, we've learned that we can expand those services outside the city of Jamestown to other parts of the county, because let's be honest, intimate partner violence happens everywhere. It's not just limited to Jamestown, although Jamestown has the largest number, being obviously the most populated city in the county. The county received $847,225 total. That amount is to be shared between the district attorney's office, the sheriff's office, Jamestown Police Department, probation, and the Salvation Army. Now, the Jamestown Police and the Salvation Army are going to be executing their own contracts, so what I'm here for today just pertains to the DA's office, the sheriff's office, and probation. So the resolution is just to accept the Chautauqua County portion. The district attorney's office, out of that big lump sum, received $272,400. The sheriff's office received $27,500. And probation received $148,886. Now, this revenue was not included in the 2025 budget for each of those departments. It was not something we knew was a possibility last year, and of course, through the application process, it was never a guarantee. So we're requesting to amend the 2025 budgets for each department. The amendments are budget neutral, and the money that will be utilized in 2026 will be reflected in each of the 2026 budgets for those departments.
It's a pretty good and unexpected receipt of a grant.
It's beautiful and well
Yeah.
needed too.
Sure. You know, each department moving forward will be able to utilize these funds, I'm sure. Do you have a plan in place?
We do. So the sheriff's office, their share is smaller to begin with. They're primarily going to dedicate their money to overtime details. Probation is going to fund a full-time senior probation officer. The DA's office is going to employ a part-time investigator. The grant also requires that we employ a coordinator of the grant because it is such a complex moving part. So we will employ the coordinator. We're also going to use the money for things like training and outreach, and that's going to be a big chunk of our portion.
Do you expect any increase in personnel over, you know, in receipt of this and, you know, moving forward?
So right now, because of the money that's available to us, there are additional people who are going to be brought into each of these departments. We don't necessarily have a plan for if the money is lost. The understanding is that these positions are, you know, limited to the grant funding at this point in time. It is a huge project. It makes a big difference to every county in the state. And I think it would be very surprising if the state did not continue this program for years to come.
Questions or comments?
Yeah, it's a great program, and I would love to see it continue. That's my only fear, is that it gets rolling, and then maybe you have a change in administration at the state level, and then, you know, we would lose this. But and you may not know the answer. I was kind of curious about how the Salvation Army would be using that money, or the Jamestown Police Department.
So
If
the
you don't.
Jamestown, yes, I will speak to the best of what I can here. Jamestown is going to be using it for overtime details, for training. They're going to be doing warrant checks and things like that, so they can get to houses and speak to people who, you know, may be connected to someone who has a warrant in a DV arrest or something like that. The Salvation Army, they offer services to victims as far as attending court, providing access to counseling services, sometimes housing. So I expect the money will go that way for them.
It'll be put to good use.
Yes, it will.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Not hearing any. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, I think number 6, proposed resolution setting transportation stipend Chautauqua County coroners.
Good morning, Tony Shekels, Corner Supervisor, Chautauqua County. So, this proposal is, we've been planning for this for a long time. The coroner's office will have its own vehicle. It's at Schultz's in Jamestown, currently being put together soon. So, this would give a stipend, or not a stipend, extra pay to the coroners if they chose to transport a body for autopsy to Buffalo. And then if there was, and that's very rare, something within the county where it'd be better for us to transport the body to, say, our morgue or to a hospital or whatever, there'd be an additional pay for them to do that too. This is a savings. We currently pay contract funeral homes to do our transport. It's not a huge savings, but it'll save us about $100 of transport when we do it ourselves. And if I do it, it'll save us $475. So, or, you know, most of it. So, it's not a huge savings, but it is a savings. It's in our budget to transport bodies to for the coroner's office. So as this moves on, I think it'll be a much bigger savings than we think.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, I got a question, Mr. Chairman, if someone, a Chautauqua County resident dies outside of Chautauqua County, does our coroner
No.
transport him back here? or
No,
would they-
no. That's all arranged through whatever funeral services that they're using. Wherever you die, that's where the coroner's office that will, if it's an unattended or suspicious death, that's the coroner office or medical examiner's office that's gonna handle that death. And just like us, if it's a natural death, they're gonna turn it over to a funeral service to, deal with the body. They'll release the body to the funeral service. It happens frequently. People die in other areas and.
Yeah, or
the fu-
outside the country too.
Right,
I
and,
was-
and funeral homes are used to it. They have a system in place where they transport to each other. If it's in a different state, funeral directors, it happens quite frequently. Yeah.
Unless you're in the business, you don't know about it, because if you're utilizing the service, you definitely don't know about it.
Right.
Unless you're on the living end of it.
People tend not to
Someone
think
you
about the
loved one.
coroner's program very
Yeah.
much.
It just happens, and we get to know about it because it's a program that we have to facilitate, so.
Right.
Questions, comments? Not hearing any. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have a proposed resolution. I'd like to take out of order. It would make sense to cover number 8 first. So we will start with 8, and it's proposed resolution number 8, authorizing agreement for the Children and Youth with Special Health Care Needs Program.
Good morning. I am Lacey Wilson, Public Health Director. The first, now that we've switched to them, the first of the resolutions is a proposal to renew and accept the continued funding that we receive for our Children and Youth with Special Health Care Needs Program. This is a program that ensures that there is a systematic, streamlined, and efficient system of care for children in our community that experience a variety of different chronic disease, medical conditions, developmental conditions as well. This system supports referrals for these children ages 0 to 21 to ensure that we are intervening as early as we possibly can to provide them services and supports so that they have improved outcomes. We do not provide the services ourselves. We are the coordinators, so we do all of the coordination of care around these services, ensuring that there are support services like OT, PT, speech, that sort of thing. We work closely with the school districts, medical providers, and then we also provide other opportunities in terms of social and behavioral support for them as well. So again, this is just to accept the funding between now and 2030.
So this funding, a question I would have is that, what is the total expense of the program? And are we paying is there a state flat rate that they pay? And so this is based on what we expect our costs to be?
Yes, this is, actually, finance might have more of the actual numbers in regards to the cost of this program, because this program is sort of an umbrella program. We have, like our early intervention service and our preschool program, which is sort of tied into these programs. The preschool program is the one that we come and talk to you all about in terms of the transportation, and there's the cost to the county in that sense. But yes, it is a flat rate that comes from the state to us. There's a slight increase year over year, really just accounting for, cost of living increases and expense increases, that sort of thing. So in regards to what the overall expense for this, I don't have that number. I would have to get that from our team. the
Okay.
finance
I was just curious what percentage they're covering of this, if, what our local share would be in our program costs, and,
Right, yeah.
and if this is 30% of it, 100%, so.
I don't have it, we don't
Okay.
have it on
Mhm.
hand, but
And, yeah,
Yeah.
and this is, so again, this part of the care is just the coordination, so this really is just paying for, some of the supportive services that go along with this, but mostly for the one FTE that really coordinates all of these services. She supports typically between 200 and 300 students every year.
Okay. Questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And our next proposed resolution is number 7, which is authorized agreement for children and youth with special health care needs program community accessibility and inclusion component.
So this piggybacks on the program that we just previously discussed. This is sort of a one-time pot of funding that the state is offering to counties to really improve and sort of inspire and motivate the counties to take on some specific projects that that we feel would really improve the service coordination and the outreach to these families, really support the families in our community. Each community is slightly different in terms of what the needs are for these families. Some counties in our state have a really robust transportation system, and transportation is not an issue for those families to get to the services that they need. In other counties, transportation is the major issue. So this pot of funding really allows each county to sort of create a project that would help specifically overcome the barriers that we see in our community. So this funding just, allows us to really do that program creation and implementation. Sort of a special project.
Any questions, comments?
Just a comment, I think this is a really positive thing. I think, promoting accessibility and inclusion is a good thing.
Yeah, we've done some groundwork and piloted some programs in the early intervention division that we have that have been very, very successful in connecting families and children with these services in more group settings, which allows us to obviously keep transportation costs lower, keep provider costs lower, because the providers are coming in and working with a group of children as opposed to one-on-one, which the rates, you're obviously paying one-on-one instead of a group there. So this helps. Our project idea would help, obviously improve the issue that we're seeing with low providers, just access. We don't have providers in our community. That's really becoming an issue with PT and OT and speech. So this really is a creative strategy to utilize the ones that we do have that are wonderful and very dedicated to this program to serve more children and more families in a more efficient way. And then we've seen some really great kind of supplemental outcomes from this in terms of just that camaraderie and that socialization where these families are coming together and they're finding a lot of support in each other and building community, which is, we can't ask for more when we build these programs. So that's what we plan to do with this money, is build out those kind of group programs more.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Not hearing any. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Next resolution is number 9. It's a proposed resolution to transfer American Rescue Plan Act spending plan budget from 2024 to 2025 interfund transfers to capital projects.
Morning, Kitty Crow, Director of Finance. This resolution is just to update some of the interfund accounts related to the ARPA projects that were continuing on to be spent down in 2025. So it's just kind of the interfund accounting related to those projects.
Questions, comments? Pretty straightforward. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next proposed resolution 10 is amend Department of Finance 2025 budget for equipment purchases.
Okay, so this resolution is to move funds from our contractual account into the .2 accounts, which is where equipment is purchased. We had a little bit more equipment needs, and really it's furniture needs for replacing some desks and chairs throughout the offices, so we just need to move the money into the different classification.
Replacing old stuff. Everyone is pretty much transitioned into this office space now.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, with the transfers. Questions, comments?
Who do we buy our office furniture from? Do we buy locally?
I mean, yeah, whoever, I mean,
Who
whoever
else
we
bid?
have a bid with, I think it's, Han is, a lot of it comes from there, yeah. But that would be something that we do bids for routinely, so who we have furniture from, or state contract. But throughout our offices, most of the furniture that, anytime we're replacing something, we're kind of going with the standard, set of furniture that's easily movable and, doesn't require a lot of, like, some of the cubicle furniture in the past, like, you have to have, like, somebody come in and really disassemble it and reassemble it if you wanna change anything, so, all the furniture we've been buying, we're trying to make everything look consistent from office to office, and it's in a really affordable price range, so we're just trying to keep to that standard look. And allow us, I mean, if we did have to move offices, it's easy to pick up and go, so.
Questions, comments?
I'm keeping my funny comments to myself.
Where are you guys going? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next proposed resolution, number 11, is investment policy for County of Chautauqua.
Okay, so, based on our conversations last month, this resolution and the next one are just to reconfirm, the current policies with no changes.
Questions or comments? I didn't have an opportunity
Glad to see that we reviewed them,
Yeah, no, I
which
agree.
is what we were supposed to do. So we did what we were supposed to do, and that's a good thing.
You know, over the last few months, we've had the opportunity to discuss it and review it, so, and that if we've wanted to adjust or change things, we had that opportunity, so, the diligence of
Yeah,
our responsibility is covered till next year.
Appreciate the work done
Yeah.
to get it done.
and just, might seem silly in a way to do a resolution just to say that, but it just helps keep track too and have it on the record that you did review it, there's no changes, you're re-adopting, so to speak, the policy, annually, so.
Yeah, and it's something that, you look at some of these things as something was adopted so long ago, and you say, well, have we looked at it since then? So this, it shows that we have, I'll pick on the sewer department for a little bit, we're renewing some of those things that were pretty aged, so, yeah, good that we're
And when I
covering
was
it,
looking
so.
over the agenda, I saw these two, and I just thought, oh, okay, we're gonna talk about them. I didn't realize, I didn't see resolution next to them,
Oh.
so I like that.
Mhm.
I think that's good.
Yeah,
It confirms more than we just, yeah, let's talk about it. Okay. So, good job.
other questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And number 12 is the proposed resolution financial management policy for County of Chautauqua. So similar type thing, something we've reviewed, looked at, and had the discussion on, so comments or questions?
I would say something nice, but I'm done saying nice things. so.
Only have so many
Yeah, how many
to give
times
out
are
a
you
day.
saying it, Dave? Bob?
We might need them later, so it's, no, good job, good job.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next on our agenda today is other. We do have some discussion items that we'd like to address under other. Chairman Shagnon would like to discuss something, so
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to discuss the jail needs presentation that was made to the legislature at the last legislature meeting. I would start by reviewing with the committee that last November, the legislature established a special committee to review and make recommendations to the legislature regarding the county jail needs assessment. That committee has been meeting numerous times since then. They have been meeting with Labella Associates and Justice Planners regarding their jail needs assessment and their draft report regarding the jail needs assessment. As a reminder, that committee is comprised of the chairs of the legislature committees for public safety, public facilities, and our own famous Dan Pavlock from the Audit and Control Committee, as well as legislator Bob Bankowski and Phil Landy. It also includes jail warden Captain Stugzinski, former jail administrator Jim Crowell, sheriff fiscal supervisor Riley Enlow, and Assistant Deputy Director for Public Facilities, Josh Rothwell. So a pretty broad committee. And now that we've had the presentation that was funded, the assessment and report has been funded. The question is, what do we do next? Where do we go from here? Wherever we go from here is going to cost money. Whether we decide to build a building, or whether we decide to do more investigation, or whether we decide to design something, it's going to cost more money. So that's why I felt it was appropriate to have a discussion this morning. So the result of the assessment was coming to a conclusion in the view of the committee as to how many beds were required and what was required to bring the facility up to current modern standards. So what hasn't been discussed in great detail is alternatives. Okay, so one path we could take would be to say, yep, we're fully in agreement with the recommendations, we want to go to design. Let's get a price to proceed to go to design and get this project on its path to being built. Another direction we could take would be, we feel we need more discussion about alternatives. Not so much, I think the committee's done a very thorough job of talking about the number of beds, but I think there are opportunities to discuss alternatives to that in terms of where, how, if, those type of things. I've had a discussion with Mark Geis, the Director of Planning and Economic Development, and he has expressed willingness to participate in that type of a discussion, if you will, even to facilitate that type of a discussion from a planning perspective. Not to say that Labella Associates and Justice Planners have not done a fine job up to this point, but bringing in a county planning perspective may assist the committee in thinking about this in terms of alternatives that may be more palatable or attractive to the taxpayers. Obviously, the number the dollar number that we were presented with was staggering to all of us. And so I think it's appropriate that the county, at least the legislature, engage in further discussion before we choose a path forward. So I would just want a discussion about that. If the path that we're choosing is to proceed, let's go, let's build, let's design it and build it, we're gonna see a resolution in front of the legislature in the next month or two for a dollar figure, I don't know what that would be, to take those next steps. If we choose that we would like to have more discussions, then that would require discussions with Labella and justice planners. What would that mean? What would that cost? And then we could be anticipating in the next couple of months a resolution to say, here's what they're proposing, we have that discussion and what it would cost us. So I didn't intend to frame the question so specifically, but that's what's been going on in my mind. And also, I think that Mark Geis and his staff could be of assistance in this process as to where we're at right now.
And you might have answered this, so forgive me if you did. So when we got our presentation from Justice Planners in Labella, was that based on the number of beds that we're coming up with, or were they, I mean, were you guys working directly with them? Did you have an influence, if I can call it that, on the presentation, or was that theirs?
The committee had
Makes
an
sense.
influence on the presentation. In other words, justice planners prepared a projection of future bed needs based on all sorts of information, excellent information. And then the committee had to decide, what do we think is the right number? Also, today, we currently house federal inmates. The committee had to decide, is that something that we would like to continue to do or not continue to do? So the committee was involved in framing the presentation, directing it to a point where they could present it, that here's what the committee is
As far as
feeling
the
now.
bed, that all made perfect sense to me.
Yep.
Um,
That was a long discussion, that was several meetings.
But not having the federals and being realistic with the number, and I appreciated that part. Of course, I think we all kind of took a breath when we saw $120 million. That's yesterday's number already. That's how I'm looking at it. It's gonna be more. So the main input was the beds, or was it, I mean, did you guys actually sit down and talk about, do we tear down this building, do we add on to that building, was that, all that in play also, or was that more of their design?
There was discussion of that, but I don't feel that discussion was comprehensive. Dan?
No, agreed. So to answer some of your questions in regards to, cover beds first. I think beds, we certainly challenged that, we certainly questioned that, and we had some input at during some of the committee meetings, and then would have research and further discussion at the next meeting based on those conversations. So I think those bed numbers were continually updated and changed based on committee questions and responses. So those, I think the numbers were really thorough in discussion. But to answer the question about options, briefly, this is option one, this is option, and we did discuss those options in some detail, but there's a Y in the road and we're stuck at the intersection, okay? And that's where I think we need to discuss which direction we need to go. I think that there's, we just need some more information in that, in that decision process. I think our numbers are pretty well panned out with when those questions have been answered and asked. I have a good feeling on those. And that's a question mark, really, based on trends, but,
Well, and
it's
the
a good
reason-
guess,
The reason
but.
I asked was, again, the numbers thing made sense to me. The dollars, I think we all would like to maybe have different options. But I put great stock in the group of individual, if all the legwork's been done, sometimes we don't have to redo everything. That's why I was asking the particulars of how involved our group was in that. So you have answered that question for me.
It is challenging, I think a good point that Legislator Shagness brought up is that moving forward, we could engineer that study, what is the best path moving forward? And there's certainly some firms that would be able to do that, but it comes to a cost, right? So our next cost expense would be a round number, $100,000 to do this study and discussion and give us that direction. I am intrigued a little that the planning department is willing to maybe help with that.
They got a little encouragement from Chairman Shagnon.
So I will also be glad to make some phone calls to help encourage that, because if
The willingness is there.
I think that it would be pretty unique if we could instill their input on this. It could be helpful down the road too with future projects, but this is a pretty major project.
Yes.
And I think that being able to utilize some of our county staff currently to help mitigate some of those expenses to figure out our direct path moving forward. Not that our committee probably couldn't reconvene. Now, the committee is part of the committee is Labello Group, right? So, they obviously have an interest in completing that next step survey, because it's lucrative for them to do so. But, I think it isn't, I think if the planning department would be willing to help, and as long as the help is what we need to do, right?
Yep.
So if it's inside their realm, I think that that's a pretty good option for us to try to utilize. Now, one thing I will say is, the point of all this too is to keep this project moving forward. We don't want this to end up stalling, and then a year from now saying, where's this jail stay, where's the process? We don't want it to take years to develop either. This is something that, as Sheriff Quattrone has mentioned too, there isn't an urgency in sense that we're gonna be shut down, but there is an urgency because, we really have been delaying this for years, and the building is not getting any better. And there are actually hazards in the building currently that, it needs updated. It's something that can't really be pushed down the road year after year. The other thing and why it isn't sensible to keep pushing it down the road is expense. The more and more it's pushed down the road, the more expensive it does get. You think 120 million, add another 10 years to it, it'll be 220 million. Then you'll have, so that's a real concern too. So, delaying does cost us. Now, 120 million is an option. I think, through some discussion and use of the planning department, maybe we could get that number down to 70.
Yeah.
Maybe so, maybe 80, and that's where now at that crossroad, where do we go? In which direction do we wanna, should we go down? And,
I guess I'm suffering a little bit from study shock. 16 years ago, we didn't have a study for everything that we move forward with. So I guess it's kind of become the method of how we move forward. It's just, I think, it's $100,000 for a study. I guess it's just the new modern way of doing business. We didn't used to spend $100,000 to move forward. And if we do a study, then my assumption is we're moving forward with it. Or,
Well,
at least to get to a point where we can
make a decision.
that decision.
Make a decision. Just to expand on the involvement of the planning department. After this committee had met numerous times and we came to the point of making the presentation, Pierre's thought was, are we falling into the trap of groupthink? This committee had all received the same information, had all the same discussions, but were we missing something? So should we invite some other person's group consultant into the discussion to see if there's something we're missing? And so then who would that be? And then I settled on our own planning department, which will cost us no dollars out of pocket. And to bring a planning perspective to this, which I think could be valuable, rather than inviting Joe Smith, who's my neighbor, who's not involved with the county at all, to, get a different perspective than us on the committee who've been involved with this through the whole process.
And I think that's great, because you do fall into that group thought. You're all presented with the same.
Yep.
And then you talk amongst yourselves. I've been a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you end up typically reinforcing each other's, and it stays within, and the decision is, and it's all good, but that,
When you're looking for alternatives, it's always good to have another perspective.
and the planning department's good at finding those out of the box.
And we wanted full transparency, that's why, the committee said, what's our next step now? And we said, let's bring it to the full legislature, first through committee process, which it went in front of quite a few committees, because we wanted it to be thoroughly asked and vetted, in which it was. And then at the full legislature as well, so that way, everybody knows what's going on, where it stands. And I think that was just an act of, we want everybody on board with all the current information, and the work that the committee had
But
done
the
so far.
presentation I
So-
saw, that's why I asked, was that the presentation asked for and created by the committee, or was that their presentation?
I would say both, I mean.
Well, no, and I got the
yeah.
answer, but that's
Yeah.
why I asked it.
Yeah.
Is that it, or is that, okay,
Understood.
I got it, I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
not let that go.
My first question again in mind is, how long can we keep going as is? Like, is there a deadline? I know, and I think your analogy of we're at the fork in the road, who said when you get to the fork of the road, take it? So you'll be there, So when will we have to make that decision? Because you're right, the longer we wait, the more it's gonna cost.
Tom, to that point, there is no firm deadline.
Okay.
As the sheriff pointed out, we're not in danger of the old section of the jail being shut down tomorrow. It could happen anytime, but we don't have that deadline in front of us at this point.
And then, I felt like, okay, I went to buy a car, and they showed me the most expensive model. And I'm like, well, what else do you got? And that's kind of where I'm at with alternatives. And I understood that when they added on before, we could go up before. Isn't that, I don't know,
So
that's
the-
still
the-
true, or?
Yeah, so
And that's not gonna be cheap, but is it cheaper than 120 million?
the reason that wasn't looked at, it was looked at. The reason it wasn't as highly considered is because then you run into the situation where the space cannot be inhabited while construction is taking place. So everybody has to be vacated for construction. Now, a construction could be, how long is that gonna take? So we have to transplant all of our personnel and inmates and facility
couldn't
for
work-
a year or two, right?
Couldn't
Like,
work adding a floor, like you'd have to, the inmates below it would have to be moved?
Yes.
Everybody's out.
Really?
Can't do construction above inhabited space.
So everybody's moved out.
Is
Now,
it unsafe to do that?
Yes.
doesn't mean- now, we
Yes.
do have facility, more facility in the 39 structure. So it would take some, I think that could be utilized a little more. We
Yeah.
do have some space there. We could push the state to accept some of the transfers that they're sitting on. There's some potential there that it takes some moving some inmates around. I'm not as familiar with talking about that as Sheriff Patron, but Sheriff Patron could, I think if we asked him, he could work on figuring out what the logistics of that could be and what that actually would look like, because I think that option of actually cost of completing the project is lower, but the expense of facilitating those inmates is higher, right, or more of a headache. Now,
Is that a good trade-off or
is that a
not?
good trade-off? Yeah.
That's one of
We're
the
gonna find out.
alternatives Tom, that we've been talking
Too
about.
bad we can't build it and set it.
I know, well, yeah, I didn't know that we couldn't.
That's,
we had
that's
to
the question.
Move those inmates out.
Legos.
And, I mean, I've done, I don't know, for over 20 years, I brought my classes up here. I did 2 tours of the jail every year. And, and when I'm in there, I'm always considering the people that work there. And I would not wanna work in that 1939 section. If, I don't feel bad for the inmates that are in there, sorry, they're there in their home, it's their own fault that they're there, but that'd be a difficult place to work.
So in the story I was visiting, the guard stations are on each of those levels of the old section. And the officer, like something flew by him. What the heck was that? Ricocheted around, and he didn't know what it was. And so he actually had to go back and, did an inmate throw something at him? What was it? So he went back, and it was actually a piece of concrete that flew under pressure out of the structure and flew by him. So there's things that are happening in settlement, and you can actually see it in the floor. You know, it's cracking, it's settling, it's, you know, so there's things
Yeah.
need to be done, you know.
Yeah.
The building's moving around, and that, it was shooting projectiles. That's not, you know, it happens, and it's not the first time that had happened, so. You know.
Well, if the committee is amenable, I will work with the sheriff and Mark Geis to develop a plan for how we can reconvene the committee and have further discussions about alternatives or where we go from here, I guess is a better way to describe it. And there will ultimately be a price tag for that. So like I said, probably the result of that will be us bringing a resolution to the legislature in the next couple of months saying, we want to spend this much money to do that. If the committee's amenable with that process,
Yeah, I mean, another concern I just thought about, like, I know whenever we had a building project at school, the maintenance guys would say, are we hiring more maintenance people to work? Cause you're adding a new gym or a new whatever classrooms, and it's gonna mean more work for them, and it's another thought.
right, well,
Comes to mind, but,
we did talk about, in the committee, about staffing. And the staffing required in the old section of the jail, staffing per inmate is very high. Whereas in the newer section of the jail, the staffing per inmate is lower because of their ability to monitor multiple units more effectively. So there is staffing implications, and I'm sure that there could be maintenance, there are maintenance, obviously, implications, and
And I think obviously on the maintenance side of things, it's, I don't wanna put my foot in my mouth, but I think it'd be easier. You know, maintaining that older structure, you have pretty severely decaying infrastructure, meaning piping, water lines, concrete, right? Bars, painting, maintenance, you know, and like Sheriff Quattrone had mentioned, it's a headache maintenance too. This breaks, you can't go back to the company that designed it from 1936, right? You have to go to a local machine shop with precise measurements or have them come and say, okay, we see what we gotta. So I think that we would actually be mitigating some of that. Some of the, now, I will say that the jail has done a really good job in maintaining what they do have. If something needed replaced, they replaced it. If the water system was poor, they replaced it. A lot of the maintenance stuff comes from this building. So power, heating, a lot of it comes from this building and feeds that older section too. So there's, you know, maintenance things are, certainly have been discussed, but I think that's not as much of a concern. And to Pierre's point, the supervision of the inmates is actually gonna be better. And I think transporting inside the facility will be easier as well. You know, there's some, systems in place now, it's inmates are moving around in that place a lot, and they're going here to there, and it's not as easy as a new facility would facilitate.
Yeah, there's a lot of goodness, a lot of good things in the proposal to improve the facility. If it wasn't for a price tag, I'd be all, let's go.
So, you know, and I am all to go, but in the proper direction.
Yes.
And, so I think that we just need to really vet out a direction. Can we do it in-house? That's a question. As to what aspect, or do we need to have that study, right? That's the crossroads we're at right now. And, I think that we could have a hybrid by the sounds of it.
Yep.
So I think I'm curious to see how this hybrid would work, but also, you know, let's move it along and make that decision in a month or two. So that way we're not holding it up too. So keep the momentum going and, but also correctly.
Right, and I think this is what the sheriff was looking for. He stated that he didn't wanna be accused of being caught with, oh, I didn't know we needed a new jail.
Yeah.
He's bringing it to our attention. And fortunately or unfortunately, we're the ones that make the decision. That's what we're here for.
Mhm.
And, yeah, I think we need to move forward. I'm just, like I said, study shock. Yeah.
So we're talking about moving forward in our own planning department, looking into before.
With the committee and our own planning department, and involving, you know, on the committee is Labella and Justice Planners, so there will be a price for their continued involvement, providing information and data. And so that's what we will be bringing back to the legislature, is a proposal to say, to take this next step with the committee and with the planning department and with Justice Planners and Labella. It's gonna cost us X number of dollars for their participation and providing information to the committee.
And I think the important point that I wanna make is that I think that it's important that the county steers that ship, okay? Because I think, we don't wanna get steered and driven into something. So that's the important part, and I just wanna be blunt in recognizing that is, you know, we wanna make sure we're moving in the direction we want to, and that's best for the county. Now, you know, what that is what we need to determine.
Right.
And,
Right.
I think that that's great that the planning could maybe help us get us pointed in that direction a little easier, because it's a county agency. And I think that, you know, we wanna move forward in a direction the county wants to move forward, and direct Labella, if that's the agency we're using, versus them directing us into a plan that they wanna do. So you know, that's why we're at a kind of a crossroad too, is, you know, we don't wanna be getting steered, we wanna steer, but making sure we're steering in the right direction.
Those comments, as well as Tom's comments about buying a new car, are very appropriate to where we are.
I always just buy the most expensive car.
So I'm the dummy that buys the most expensive for an inflated price, and my old one's useless, so, you know,
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you. Does anyone else have anything under other today that they'd like to bring to the committee?
We did get that email on the federal funds. Did you see that?
Yes.
I found it very interesting. And I was a little bit encouraged, because there were a lot of them that it didn't look like it was gonna, there wasn't a whole lot of effect
Yet,
So
is
far.
what I.
so far.
I opened up the one and I thought, the first I didn't realize, I didn't look to see all the tabs and I went, oh, that's easy. I forget what the first one was. Oh, carts or something. It was like, boom, boom. I go, wow, that'll be a quick conversation. Then I went over tab by tab. But even doing that, there were a lot of non-affected federal funding sources that, so I was encouraged by that. It wasn't like this huge blast of, we gotta come up with millions and millions and millions and millions of
Well,
dollars.
are things still up in the air?
Yes,
The-
yes.
Little bit.
Yes, in a couple
Big
cases.
beautiful bill hasn't, still being debated.
Right, but
Not
even with
passed
that
yet.
being said, it didn't look like they were,
Mhm.
you know, I don't
Yeah.
think the sky is falling.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate, the county executive's support for the job too. So, wanted to thank you for that.
I think there's a lot of things that have to be looked at, but, you know, one of the things I'm faced with is we have a direct conversation with the congressman. And a lot of these things that come out are not fully vetted, they're not fully understood, and they're not even done in some pieces of the bill. Sure. I've said, hey, this is what we're hearing, we haven't even negotiated that yet. So, there are certain phases that they say, oh, this is what's gonna happen. Well, they could happen, it's not determined yet. So, in essence, we need to sit back and keep our powder dry. Not that we're gonna be pivoting, and if we have to, we have to. But it's frustrating is every time something comes, we look at it, it's not even been decided yet. So, yes, but, you know, the Job Corps piece is, there's several pieces. One, it's a skills trade that these people need, without a doubt. I spoke with somebody yesterday, our numbers are much higher than those averages. Those need to be looked at. The second piece is,
Kind of question, the numbers, are, you mean the graduation rates? or-
Yeah.
Okay.
I was told at one point, some numbers were given in the county, at our level were 90%. The average they're talking about at the federal level was 38%.
Yeah.
I spoke to somebody yesterday, last night, and they said ours aren't at 90%, but they're much better than what they're talking. So what those are, I don't know. As I was traveling back last week, I didn't stop, rather, I made a call to Delaware County and their Job Corps. It's uniquely, I don't know how Job Corps purchased these buildings, because they look like, it wasn't designed for the Job Corps. It looked like a convent, beautiful brick structure in a very secluded way. They haven't got back to me, their administrator hasn't returned. But we need to look at that, because not only are we looking at the individuals, the loss of jobs, and the significance of what that program provides, now we're looking at the facility. And that originally, historically, was a tuberculosis hospital way back in the 30s. So what do you do with all those buildings? And, you know, there's multiple components. So it's an educational component, it's a job component, and then it's facilities. So, you know, we support that, we need to keep going. But I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all. That's what needs to happen. We need to look at each individual.
Well, they're looking to open a lot more convents, I think.
Does the county own that building?
No.
We don't. That's a federal program.
It's a developer that owns the building.
Oh, really?
He contracts with Job Corps, I believe.
I'm just trying to look things on the state.
Olivia has something to say.
By all means.
Wednesday night, Legislator Larson introduced a motion to the PED committee, and they all signed on to the motion. It is titled Supporting Job Corps. I don't know if you want to sign onto it or look at it,
Sure.
Okay.
If anyone's interested.
but I thought I would bring it to it.
A motion?
Those
Oh,
facilities
I don't know,
are,
Fred.
are important, and I think, you know, there's some
I'll
not
sign this.
too far, there, you know, the state hospital that's in, I always forget the name of that town. It's headed, it's kind of in our north, east area. It's just outside of our
Illinois.
county, and, there's a huge state hospital there that was abandoned years ago. and
Jay
it's-
and Adams,
Maybe,
up in Perrysburg?
Perrysburg, yes.
Jay and Adams.
I mean, you know, look at that facility and how massive that was and the amount of people that were there and now it's just a huge dilapidated ruins, and it's just sitting there, and there's nothing being done with it. It's really sad. I'm really thankful to see some movement on our hospital in Silver Creek. You know, that was a large facility that could have turned into the same thing. I'm glad to see some movement there, because that's a huge place that really could have just continued to fall between the cracks. So, you know, Job Corps, phew, another one of those buildings that could just sit there, and right now it's an actual a benefit to the county to have, and to you know, I think a year ago, 6 months ago, there was, I remember seeing someone come in that came through that BOCES, or Job Corps, somewhere, some county related. It was an individual, I don't remember.
Wasn't it a Job Corps? Aren't the Job Corps run by private? Aren't they like all private?
Some of them are, some of them aren't.
Ours is.
Ours is, I believe.
And it was like the director, I remember that.
I
But
don't
it had
remember
to do with the business
specifically.
of Job Corps. And as far as, I'm not looking forward to them leaving or anything, but I get frustrated when there's a facility like that, and it isn't that something can't be done with it, they don't allow something to be
Understood.
done with it. And, I mean, come on, that piece of property, I'm not, but if that were to come available, there's gotta be somebody that would
You would think,
do
but.
something with it, but that's not the result that I would like to see.
I have a question just in regards to our sales tax projections, and how those are trending, and what we would expect with. See, it seems like I think spending could have been a little slower or flattened, just with the unexpectancy of tariffs or federal funding or whatever. And I just was curious if we've experienced a little bit of that with our sales tax, or it's still trending okay?
Our sales tax is right on target, at budget. It's really hard to say how the second half of the year will play out. I mean, in some instances, you hear news stories that people were like buying and stocking up on certain things, so, that could have, contributed to the steady sales tax, so far this year. But and I know a lot, in talking to, like, say, some of our brokers, they see, like, businesses have stocked up now, so the pricing for things that, people might purchase during the holidays are pre any tariffs, so maybe costs will still not reflect tariffs even into the holiday season, but it's so hard to tell, but, I mean, I guess the good news is, so far, we're on track with our sales tax receipts. We get those in about the first week of every month, so I'm always
Sure.
kind of looking at it right then.
I know we're all stocked up in my house on deck umbrellas, we've filled the
Experiencing some.
quota, we're
some
all
wind.
set, yeah, we won't need them.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to loop back to the discussion about the report we get on federal funding. As legislator Nelson points out, at this point, until the federal budget is adopted, this is all still in play. I would also like to point out that once the federal budget is adopted, in addition to impacts directly on the county, there will be impacts on the state, which could impact the county. And I would point out that when the state adopted their budget, they left a provision that if there are impacts from federal funding, they allowed for the budget to be reopened and adjusted during the year. So there could be follow-on impacts that are not affecting us directly, that will affect us indirectly from the state. So it's good for us to continue to be vigilant in understanding those impacts as they may develop, so that we can respond as needed as quickly as possible.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, We also, Pierre made a great point, the chairman made a good point. At my meeting with NISAC last week, this is a dire concern from everybody. What has happened, and I'm sure the Senator Assemblyman can tell you, we are going down the same rabbit hole, if you will. They said it would never happen again, giving the governor the control to have the ultimate authority. It's happened again. Never in the history of the state have they given total control of the governor, if she feels, can go back in and readjust the budget. We are sitting in a very unique time, and everyone, bipartisanly, is very concerned with that. So as the chairman said, that is something we need to be vigilant and we need to watch, because I can share this, when they say, you know, the impacts on states, with many exceptions, with New York being the exception, that's a direct impact on counties. Most other states can, you know, because of services they provide, certain services we provide at New York State's level are they directly fall on the counties. So I tell everyone, please be very careful and very vigilant as to what you hear, because again, the state of New York pushes a lot of things directly to the county. So, you know, whether it's Westchester County, Albany County, Orange County, Tompkins County, Chautauqua County, we're all looking at this very, very closely, because again, it's gonna be, they can come in and say, this is what we're gonna change, and the governor has the total authority to do that, which has never happened. So, again, we really, you know, we need to be very careful.
That doesn't sound right. It sounds like the Senate and Assembly, they should have power to purchase. I mean, that's, right, isn't that a process?
They've given that to the governor. The governor has, what they've done, this total authority is identical to what happened during COVID. The Senate and Assembly said we wouldn't go down this road again, and they've given the control.
And how does that happen? I just, like,
Vote.
just a vote, so it goes down to a vote?
They vote on what they,
And that's part of the vote, so they're voting on multitude of things, but that's part, or is that a specific vote? I would think
I'd
that
have
would
to
be a
double check.
specific.
I think it may be a specific vote, but it was, again, I'm trying to say this without
I get it.
fear mongering or anything like that, but we all sat there shaking our heads, and it's like, they swore they would never go down this road again, and here we are, 5 years later. That's a lot of control to give, and it's never been done before. A lot of concern during COVID. There's much concern now, because they could come in and completely change, you know, what that budget is, and that's concerning.
Sure, because we develop our budgets based on their budgets for
Yeah.
sure, you know. And if that's something that we've developed, thankful we have a general fund.
There are counties right now that are looking at a media blitz, should this happen, to exactly what's done, what's been done, and who to contact. Because it's concerning, and I'm telling you, it's not. Again, it's not a one side, you can't say it's all of one party, it's everyone having these discussions that, should this happen, we will let people know, because, you know, there's some counties that have had no tax increase. They said, if there's a tax increase, this is who you need to call, bing, 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 bing. And that's where it's at, because it's really a concern for us, everybody. So,
And a statewide decision affects every county different. I mean, there could be counties that could benefit from a decision, not benefit, but then there's those that are, yeah, that's a tough call to just make a blanket. Like you said, the state is pretty much county funded, but on a lot of fronts. So we really should.
I mean, if you go back to, and I've said this before, and I don't mean to occupy the conversation, but we look at, for example, Medicaid. That's a growing cost. Our safety net was an $11 million increase last year. That safety net, we're 5 years post-COVID. 5 years is when people go on safety net. So how many people that qualified under the reduced standards for Medicaid are now on Medicaid, and maybe part of that safety net. So as well as we have budgeted, we could see another dramatic increase. The question is, when is the legislature going to come in and look at this and say, hey, maybe we need to step back a bit. We do have the Cadillac Rolls-Royce version of services. When is that gonna be a question? When is that becoming unaffordable? Again, you know, we're looking at just 2 cases of $60,000 of potential fraud that we're confident, you know, the PIU has established. It's 1 county times 62 counties. How much of this, getting back to the focus though, are we going to change? Are we just gonna continue to do what we're doing with these levels and say, well, okay, it just, you know, because Medicaid is born after 5 years on the counties, and that's, we do need to take a serious look at it. And we've asked this for years. Now, you know, Mr. Larson will always say, well, there's a cap on Medicaid. There is. So if that cap, and it's been talked about being changed, then this isn't the first time. I mean, it's every year. And with a supermajority, if they decide to change that cap, and that's both, that's everything. That's not just red, blue, purple. It's everything. So it's a significant.
So the governors of the states of California and Illinois both have proposals in front of their legislatures to modify their Medicaid programs, because in their words, what they have is unsustainable.
Well, ours has been there for a while. Yeah, and this is bigger than politics.
Oh, yes.
This is real stuff.
Real dollars and real people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else for the good of the operation or order or discussion?
Sun's out.
Finally.
Say something to lighten the mood a little bit. Yeah, I agree. It's concerning.
I'd like to make a motion to have a long, hot summer.
I will second that one.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, it looks like you're gonna catch a wish.
First day of summer was
Regardless of your
yesterday.
motion.
Yeah.
It's here.
Now the days are getting shorter.
I know.
It's hard to believe that, because I woke up it was 56 this morning.
Oh, it felt so.
Beautiful, and they said it's supposed to be in the 90s
It
by.
was wonderful.
Yeah.
I love it. I like to hear people complain.
Went to the gym this morning, I had windows down.
I guess if there's no other business, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to stay just a little while longer.
We can, this is a pretty early
I'll
meeting.
make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you everyone for coming.
I know.
Did we even win the discussion?
I think that's a record.